I have compiled a list of the top Subaru questions I typically get. So I'm gonna call this like the Subaru FAQ video. I guess that seems like a fitting title to this. We have 60 questions, roughly 60 plus or minus like 2 or 5 or 10 questions that we're gonna be answering that I frequently get. These are all ones that I've pulled from my DMs, from emails, from comments, everything like that over the years. So I'm not gonna go into too much explanation on these. I have pretty much dedicated videos answering all of these, so we're just gonna rapid fire through all of these questions. You're being loud, man. I'm trying to film a video. You're yelling. Whether your flip-flops are loud. Yeah. You're rubbing your nipples in front of me. Number 1, do Subarus really have bad head gaskets? Yes and no. Early model naturally aspirated 2.5 engines, yes, they have bad head gaskets. They're a composite, they're not MLS. Those are bad. Everything else is not known for having bad gaskets. What happens if your dam drops? It's reducing your ignition table, so you're not gonna have all the power that you normally have. It's a safeguard built into the ECU that is detecting that something is wrong, whether that is a fine knock-learn event, whether it's bad gas, whether it's an environmental reason. There's a ton of things. Drive the car normal. If the dam does not eventually, I'm talking long-term eventually, go back up to 1 and self-correct like it should, you can force reset your ECU learning. I don't suggest doing that. It's kind of a last resort, but it's a good way to verify if something actually is wrong or not. If your dam immediately drops again, you might have a greater issue that you may need to look into. What oil do I use? If you don't know what oil to use, open your owner's manual. It'll tell you what to use in there. Typically for EJ cars that are somewhat stock specs and stock clearances, I'll use 5W30, 5W40, 10W40. Specifically, you can pick your choice of what manufacturer oil you want to use. Valvoline's good. Modal's good, something along those lines. Is cylinder 4 really that bad? No, not necessarily. The biggest issue with cylinder 4 is unequal length headers and high EGTs in that cylinder causing greater issues long term. Equal length headers is one way to help resolve this issue and get cylinder 4 in check. The biggest thing is just high EGTs on cylinder 4 because it's the longest runner having to go in the collector, so everything gets pretty hot back there. Oh man! It'll only be like 20 minutes, I promise. Are Subarus really as unreliable as the internet says? No. What we show and what you see a lot of are a lot of the mishaps that happen, but we don't always show a lot of the good things. These cars are actually fairly reliable. Whether you leave them stock or modified, you can make Subarus last a very long time. I've seen some stock engine cars, original engine cars, up to 300 plus thousand miles. I've seen other ones here or there in the 200,000 plus up to 300K. They are reliable, you just gotta take care of them. And sometimes it is a luck of the draw thing, but they're really not that bad. Kind of contradicting to say it's kind of luck of the draw, isn't it? Do I need a tune for a catback? Absolutely not. Anything that changes the amount of air or fuel that enters or exits the engine, for the most part, is going to require a tune. Do I tune for XYZ modifications? We just kind of talked about that one. If it changes the amount of air or fuel entering or exiting the engine, it's gonna require a tune. With the exceptions being like maybe a turbo inlet, a catback, some basic thing, a fuel pump, basic things like that. How much power can my engine hold? We actually just did a video on that one for STIs, stock engine cars, really like 380 to 400 is really where your safe spot is. WRXs, EJ20 or EJ255s, 360-ish is kind of where I'd put them. Your biggest drawback is going to be your transmission. It's just not going to like the power that you're making. Which goes into, will my 5-speed hold X amount of power? Like I said, 5 speeds are not the greatest transmissions, neither are the WRX 6 speeds. Once you get above like 380, 400 foot-pounds of torque, you're really starting to flirt with danger on those cars. I personally, in my old 2014 WRX, I beat the hell out of that 5-speed trying to kill it. I couldn't kill it, but they do die pretty easy. If you're looking to make power, STI 6-speed swap is going to be the way. Is an STI actually better than a WRX? Yes and no. It really depends on what you're going to be using the car for. If you're going to be tracking the car, spirited driving, building for power, anything like that, I'd say get the STI. You already have the drivetrain, you already have the ECU, you already have the electronics. You already have everything that makes the STI an STI. 5x114 knuckles, stronger hubs, stronger wheel bearings, except in the VAs because they're also 5x114, so they have a decent wheel bearing. But axles, differential, transmission, all stuff like that. Do you really need an AOS? No, you don't need an AOS. Believe it or not, some people actually might know this. EJs, which I have a couple of them back there, have a built-in AOS in the back of the engine. They're not very good. They kind of work, they kind of don't work. Right where the crankcase breather is, if you look at the back of the block, you take a flywheel off, you take the rear long cover off, you'll see back there that's Subaru's AOS, or air oil separator, that's built into the engine. You don't need an aftermarket one if your PCV valve is good, you're not consuming oil, anything like that. I would always still suggest them, or at minimum a catch can, to eliminate how much of that oil gets put back into the intake track. Intake and oil will reduce octane in the fuel. No, Oil in your intake will reduce octane in your fuel. Less octane, higher chance of not. Can you use a blow-off valve? Absolutely. You can do it on hybrid. Just make sure you're tuned for it. At the end of the day, just make sure you're tuned for a blow-off valve. You'll be fine. What's a normal coolant temp? That's going to range from vehicle to vehicle, car to car. Typically for EJ-based cars, 206, 207 is really where you're going to see them live happily at the upper end. Your coolant fans should kick on. It should come down after that. WRXs, FA20, FA24, you're typically going to see a little bit higher of a coolant temp than you are in EJs, normally around like that 220, 224 range, but still all technically considered normal. If you're curious on what your operating temperature should be, once again, it's going to be in your owner's manual. Is the EJ20X and Y a good engine to replace my current blown up one? Absolutely not, and I say that because nobody does the swaps properly. If you're actually using an EJ20X or an EJ20Y and you're setting it up properly, you have to retard some of the cams, you have to make it a single AVCS if you're putting it in a single AVCS car from a dual AVCS. It's just nobody ever does them properly. They're an okay engine, and even when they are set up properly, they're still, in my opinion, just not a great engine. There's better options out there for the money spent. What is the biggest issue with Subaru engines? What is the biggest issue with Subaru engines? I guess people trying to push them farther than they really should be. Brad, what's the worst thing about Subaru engines?
You always gotta fix them?
Oh, shut up. Get out of here. If you get a flat tire, can you replace just one of them? If it's a brand new-ish tire, you can get away with replacing the one. If you have old tires on there, you can, technically you can replace one, but your all-wheel drive system is not gonna be happy with you. If you have old tires on there and you get a flat, if you can afford it, replace all four, or at least get a used set where all four of the wear is somewhat consistent. Since they are symmetrical all-wheel drive, yes, tire tread on one tire being better than all of the other ones can actually affect the all-wheel drive system long-term. Will the Type RA short block fit in my car? Good theory. If it came with an EJ25, it can use a Type RA short block. End of story. Can I use any parts with an OTS tune? Absolutely not. OTS tunes are off-the-shelf tunes made to work with a specific manufacturer's parts lists. If you ever have any questions on what parts you can use with that OTS tune, you can pull up the map notes of that OTS tune and read the exact parts that go with it. You cannot use like a Grimspeed intake, Grimspeed downpipe, or NVIDIA downpipe, or X, Y, and Z parts with a Cobb OTS tune. It's just, no, it's not. The OTS tune is not meant to work with those parts. Your MAF scaling is going to be wrong, flow is going to be wrong, a downpipe isn't going to work with it for a tune that doesn't have a downpipe in it, XYZ things. You need to make sure that if you are using an OTS tune, use the parts that are in the map note. On access point, how now, brown cow? The arsonist has oddly shaped feet. Will an access port void my warranty? Absolutely, 9 times out of 10, yes, unless your service advisor or Subaru America is feeling pretty chill that day. The access port rewrites the ECU and changes some numbers in there, PID numbers, and some other things that can be read by Subaru America when they plug into it. You think that you can install an access port on the car, then uninstall it, and nobody's gonna know. That's just not true. It's not true, baby. Can I open source tune my car? Absolutely, yes, you can. Will Subaru know if I tuned my car to warranty my engine if it blows up? Like I said, if Subaru or Subaru of America is feeling pretty chill, you might be able to skate by with it, but it's going to leave a mark in your ECU that they can tell. They can see it. They can physically see that the car's been tuned. 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to deny you. So if you're not ready to have the potential of having to replace an engine or having to fix your car if it breaks, just don't do it. End of story. Just don't do it. Why won't my headlights turn off on my 2002 to 2007 Impreza WRX STI Forester? On top of the steering column, there's a little switch that turns on the running lights. If your running lights are on and all of your headlight knobs are off, flip that switch, it should turn them off. Will this downpipe throw a P0420 code, which is a catalyst efficiency code? Some aftermarket downpipes will throw a P0420. A good rule of thumb to go by is if it has a Gessie G-Sport cat in it, it's probably not going to throw a P0420, but even some of them with those G-Sport cats will still throw a P0420. So to be honest, it's really hit or miss. Can I do a full STI swap, including the engine, into my 2015 to 2021 WRX? Yes and no, but it's not going to be worth it. You're better off buying an STI because you're going to need an entire STI parts car to swap into a WRX. That's going to include electronics, drivetrain, engine, dash, all of that, because the actual electronics in that car are different than that of the WRX, and it's just not going to be a plug-and-play setup. Will an STI intercooler fit on my 08-14 WRX with the stock VF52? No, it will not. The style of the intercoolers is totally different. Why is my driver's side timing marks off by half a tooth when timing my engine? It's normal, don't stress it. A lot of the times it's the AVCS not being zeroed out. It's going to look off, it's going to look like your timing isn't lined up, but where the 2 marks line up for the driver's side cam, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna see those marks kind of off by about half a tooth. Totally normal. What will kill Subarus quickly? High demand and low load situations. That's when you're in a low RPM and you're requesting a lot out of the car, like you're smashing on it. If you're in 5th gear, you're at 2K RPM and you hammer the throttle 100%, it's going to be detrimental to the engine long term. That can kill these cars. I see it happen all the time, especially on the 15 to 21 WRXs. They have an issue with LSPI, which is low speed pre-ignition. As 9 times out of 10, it's gonna be a high demand, low load situation that kills these cars. What wheels will fit on my car? For 08 to 21s, which is the most commonly asked category of this, 18 by 9.5 plus 38 is a pretty safe bet. Most wheels in that category range will fit on your car, no problem. Will my Subaru blow up? It's a very vague question that I've gotten many a time. It could, it might blow up, it might not blow up. It really depends. The biggest factors are how you drive it, how you take care of it, what's done to it, and are you building it properly. I hate to say that there's a right and wrong way to build these cars, but at the end of the day, there is a right and a wrong way to build these cars. When should you change your oil? If it's a performance car like a WRX STI, BRZ, anything like that, I'd normally suggest 3 to 5K intervals depending on what you're doing with the car. If you're obviously taking it to the track, you're running E85, you're gonna be wanting to do this oil changes sooner, especially if you're running full E85 all of the time. If it's a commuter car, you can typically get away with like 5,000-ish. If it's like a cross track, Forester, it's non-turbo, things like that. 3 to 5K is typically like the permissible range of when I normally do it. Or if you have any questions on it, you can also check your manual. That'll tell you exactly when to change it. That I'm going to caveat and say for factory cars, if it's unmodified. Best place to buy parts from, I'm biased. I get all my parts from our guys over at Rally Sport Direct, which if you're looking to save money over there, you can use our discount code, which is in the description below. It'll save you some money on your part. But there's a ton of flat irons is a really good place as well. There's a lot of good spots to get parts out there. Subi Speed, FT86 factory, it's a handful of them. My car is consuming oil. Where is it coming from? There's a couple spots. Especially if you're burning blue smoke at the back of your car, where could the oil be coming from? Your valve stem seals could be leaking, your piston rings could be worn, your PCV system or your PCV valve, if you still have one, could be shot. So it's really just troubleshooting. Like really, you got to think about it logically. How could oil get into the cylinder to be burned? PCV valve could be pushing a lot of oil through the intake track into the cylinder. It could be burning it that way. If the valve stem steel is leaking, it's going to be pushing oil from the cylinder head into the combustion chamber. If your piston rings are old and worn, oil might be getting past the compression ring and the oil scraper ring and the oil control ring and getting burnt inside the cylinder as well. Or you could have external leaks. That's another one. Will my oil pickup tube actually crack? That hasn't really happened frequently in a very long time. Those happened on a lot of the older cars in the like late 2000s, mid 2000s, so I wouldn't stress it too much, but if you're ever concerned about it, you can get an aftermarket oil pickup from IAG, Killer Bee. There's a handful. Actually, I think those are really the only 2 companies that we really get them from. I think RCM makes one also. Are the best reliability mods. Safe ones that I suggest to everyone: AOS, oil pan combo, that's gonna be the baffle, the pickup tube, the pan itself. Fluid damper is another really good one that gets overlooked quite frequently, and a coil radiator. Those are all really safe bets. My card showed -50 feedback knock. What is going on? That's called false knock, ghost knock. There's a handful of things. Subaru knock sensors are pretty sensitive, pretty touchy. You hit a pothole, it's gonna set off your knock sensor sometimes. You hit your music too loud, certain frequencies can set off your knock sensor. If you have a lightweight flywheel, that can actually cause a ghost knock sometimes as well. So there's a handful of things. So if you're seeing like -50 feedback knock with your dam still staying where it's supposed to stay, which is 1 unless you have an older 16-bit ECU. But if your dam is staying where it's supposed to stay and you see a random amount of like crazy knock come on, bad knock sensor or false knock. What are the filters inside the banjo bolt and should I remove them? I remove them out of all of my own cars and the ones that I build for people. What used to happen and what can still happen is the filters inside of the banjo bolts can get clogged over time from people neglecting to do oil changes. Oil can get gummed up in there and then it can slow down or stop oil flow flowing into the AVCS cam gears, things like that, and you get a whole bunch of really weird codes. So to remedy that, we take them out. If you want to leave yours in, you can totally leave them in. There's nothing wrong with that either, as long as you're staying on top of your maintenance intervals and you're not getting any gumming up of your oil. Once you start getting some gumming up of your oil over time, those banjo filters can clog up and they can cause an issue. So I think Subaru actually had a TSB on this a while ago and they changed the filter design. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure they did. Now use a lightweight crank pulley. You can, I don't suggest it though. Like I said, the best thing for these is really a fluid damper or ATI super damper, something along those lines. Those lightweight crank pulleys, you're going to send those vibrations, those harmonic vibrations that the fluid damper ATI or even the OEM one would be picking up, because even the OEM one is tuned to a very specific frequency to absorb some of those vibrations that would otherwise be getting sent down your crankshaft and your bearings, etc. So can you run one? Yes. Do I suggest it? Absolutely not. Can I put an STI wing on my WRX? If you want to, it's your car, who cares? Is Rotella T6 a good oil? It's an okay oil. It used to be better back in the day before they reformulated it. I don't suggest people use it anymore. Can I rear-wheel drive convert my Subaru? Absolutely you can. You can either use a BRZ trans, or you can get a rear-wheel drive spool to convert it, or you can even weld the diffs if you want to. Should I buy a used engine off marketplace? I always tell people not to buy used engines because they can be very hit or miss, most of the time being a miss. I've fallen for it before in the past. I bought one thinking it had good compression numbers, X, Y, and Z things. It was still a bad engine at the end of the day. So I don't advise you buy used engines if you can avoid doing it. How do I break in my new engine? Everybody you talk to is gonna tell you a different preference on how to break in an engine. If you have any questions on how to break in your engine, like I said, that service manual will tell you exactly what you need to know of how to break it in. For me, I break engines in up to about that 100-mile point. After that, for my own cars, I send them. The only thing that's really breaking in is your cams. If you have brand new cams in there, you have to follow a cam break-in procedure. That happens within like 20 minutes and you're following a procedure to break in those cams. Aside from that, the only other things that are really breaking in are the piston rings to the fresh hone on the cylinder liner, and you're just getting out any debris that may be in the engine from a rebuild, which you shouldn't have any debris, but sometimes it does happen. So you're gonna wanna do an oil change almost immediately after running your car for the first time on a new engine. But like I said, everybody you talk to is gonna give you a different engine break-in procedure. Why does my oil look shiny? If it's a new engine, totally normal. You're gonna get some shininess in it. If it's an old engine that's worn and your oil looks really shiny, probably a bearing failure. Or somebody put glitter in your oil, which that's just mean. Can I manual swap my CVT? Absolutely not. Well, you can, but it's not worth it. There's a lot of wiring and electronics that the CVT uses to communicate with the ECU, and you're just not gonna be able to do it on any type of affordable budget. Can I manual swap my auto? Yes, depending on the car. I'm not gonna get into each car that you can. Can I turbo my NA Subaru? Absolutely you can. People do it all the time. There's actually there's a couple pages on Facebook for NAT conversions. You can absolutely turbo your naturally aspirated car. Is the new WRX worth buying? Yes, it's a fantastic daily driver car. Coming from someone who's had 2 of them, they make good power for pretty cheap. They're comfortable, they're reliable, they're good dailies. If you want to make easy power on them up to like that 400 wheel horsepower point, you can do that all day long. Can I change my spark plugs myself? Absolutely. It's not as hard as people say. I have a full video walking you through how to do it all. Can I still tune my car with the green speed stuff? Absolutely, you still can, yes. STI trans versus WRX transmission. The STI transmission is going to hold way more power. It's going to feel more mechanical. It's going to be a lot more notchy. You get stronger axles if you decide to do the axle, wheel hubs, wheel knuckles, all that stuff. Overall, it's just a better transmission. Unless you like the longer gearing of a 5-speed, but to build a 5-speed, you could get a 6-speed also. Will flat foot shifting hurt my car? Eventually, over time, yes. If you want race car things, you're going to have race car problems. Just keep that in mind. Same thing goes to the next one. Will launching my car hurt it? Long term, eventually it will start to do some damage to it long term, unless you have some like crazy anti-lag stuff like we had on the 6-cylinder and stuff like that. Just keep in mind, you want race car stuff, you're gonna have race car problems. Easy way to remember it by. What RPM should I launch my car at? That really depends on your setup. If you're just looking to get into it, you're looking to get some practice, around 5K is a pretty good starting point, and you can adjust from there. Should I use head studs? I use head studs even in basic engine rebuilds that I do for people. ARP 2000s are really good to go to. You have 625s if you're looking to make some power. 1/2 inch is another good one. If you don't want to use head studs, there's nothing wrong with using head bolts. You can reuse your old head bolts if you want to, but you do have to make sure that they're still within spec. What generation of the WRX is best to buy? It's really preference on what you want. I'll tell you that the worst generation WRX to buy is going to be 08 to 10. Nothing against you narrow body owners. This has nothing to do with the narrow body. Personally, I'm not a fan of the narrow body, but at that time, Subaru did have some issues with engines. There's already been an open recall sent out about it. That they did. It's not even a recall. I think they just admitted to it and they extended some warranties out. But yes, 08 to 10 in my opinion is the worst generation WRX to buy. What is the best generation to buy? STI wise for that, worst generation to buy in my opinion is 04. I don't like 04 STIs. That's just a personal vendetta I have against 04 STIs for being a little bit different than everything else. Axles are different. Axles, they could have 2 different kinds of axles depending on the month that they were made in. But 04 STIs, I'm not a huge fan of them. What is the best generation WRX and STI to buy? If you're looking at WRX, it's really like up to you. If you like the newer ones, they're really good daily drivers. You can make good power on them like we've talked about. If you like the styling of like the 2011 to 2014 hatches, that's another good, very good WRX. I enjoyed mine when I had them. Even the older ones, if you're looking for GD, solid cars. Best generation of STI, in my opinion, to buy is if you want a very raw feeling car. 05 or 07 are the top 2 years, in my opinion. Or the 2018 plus STI is a solid answer as well. Or if you're looking for a GR, 2011 to 2014. I think that's like 60 questions right there. I was gonna toss in like the stages question, what is each stage, but you know, those have changed. Those have changed over the years. So with that is all I've got. That is every like common question I have been asked. So I hope this video helps new owners, current owners, anybody who has those questions. I'm just rapid firing off answers, so you don't gotta search forums, you don't gotta ask, you don't gotta post in the Facebook group if you don't want to either. You still can, but I see a lot of people get upset about some of these questions being posted in Facebook groups. But anyways, that's all I got for you guys on this one. With that, I need to get back to wire wheeling my 2.5 RS here so we can get to painting this thing and turning this thing into a 22B. So with that, if you like the video, you know what to, actually no, if you like the video, you know what to do. Go and hit that like button, turn it black, blue, green, or purple, silver site, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to be able to put it in one of these corners, no idea which one quite yet, but with that, I will catch you guys in the next one. So peace out, homies.